So Danielle Smith has had a pretty interesting first few weeks as Alberta Premier. If you remember, on her very first day as Premier of Alberta, she dared to do the unthinkable. She dared to defend the unvaccinated, and by doing so, the legacy media journalists called for her head. They said they couldn't believe she dared to defend the unvaccinated. And then she issued a groveling statement, basically an apology the next day, begging for forgiveness from the legacy media for daring to defend the unvaccinated. Then, of course, in that same week, she was forced to issue her second apology, this time for comments she made about Ukraine. So it wasn't looking very good. It was looking like maybe conservatives had the old Aaron O'Toole on their hands, a conservative who constantly backtracks and apologizes for being a conservative. Well, that changed this week because Danielle Smith decided to embark on a very noble crusade, that being to rid the Alberta Health Services and the province of Alberta of the influences of the World Economic Forum. Take a look at what she said to Western Standard journalists regarding the Alberta Health Services agreement with the World Economic Forum.
I must tell you, I believe that Alberta Health Services is the source of a lot of the problems that we've had. They signed some kind of a partnership with the World Economic Forum right in the middle of the pandemic. We've got to address that. Why in the world do we have anything to do with the World Economic Forum? That's got to end.
So there you go. Pretty solid stuff right there. Danielle Smith saying it very clearly and very plainly. Why does Alberta have anything to do with the Switzerland-based World Economic Forum? And in particular, why does the Alberta Health Services have anything to do with the World Economic Forum? I mean, that is clearly something that should be addressed. But you see, there's a problem. The legacy media journalists that get paid off by Justin Trudeau seem to not like it very much when a conservative premier starts to talk about the World Economic Forum. They really like to chirp up actually quite a bit when a premier dares to challenge the WEF. Now we can sit here and pretend like the World Economic Forum has no influence in this country, but that of course would be false. Just take a look at what Klaus Schwab said about infiltrating Canada's cabinet.
What we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, is that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young noble leaders of the World Economic Forum.
So they infiltrate the cabinets of Canada, and it's not a problem at all. It's no issue for legacy media. That would be something that they would have no interest in investigating at all whatsoever. Of course, right? Because why would they dare try and look into something like that would perhaps cast their dear leader, the man who pays them their salaries, in a bad light? Well, Danielle Smith didn't get that memo, and she's on a noble crusade to try and rid the province of the WEF. And take a look at how a legacy media journalist handled all of that at Danielle Smith's cabinet announcement. Completely unhinged. Watch this.
Sorry, Premier, before I think there's some unfinished business from Saturday. I think Albertans deserve an answer. As you know, you're the Premier, you can make health decisions, but I think you would agree there's a responsibility to explain to Albertans why you're making these decisions. WEF. It's not clickbait, Premier. It's not entertainment. It's actually a health policy decision that you announced on Western Standard on Friday. AHS confirms there is a deal with WEF. It's very minor. It's an information sharing deal, but it does exist. And you're saying we are going to cancel that and not anything to do with WEF. Policy decision. So, sorry, I had to write this down because it was that. What concerns do you have then with WEF? And is it because you accept the online conspiracy theory that WEF is a front for a global cabal of world leaders bent on using the pandemic to destroy capitalism and install a socialist dysfunctional dystopia? And I'm sorry if I didn't get the whole theory correct.
Do you think that the WEF is a global cabal for a world dystopia? I mean, who wrote that question? I mean, he said there he has to reference his notes, which makes me think you were asked to tell that question by someone who wrote that question for you. Because if you're a real journalist, you clearly have other things to ask about. And the journalist admitted that this so-called deal with the WEF is an information sharing deal. So why would it matter if Danielle Smith wants to get rid of that deal? Why would it matter if Danielle Smith wants to end that agreement? The point stands. Why does the AHS have an agreement with the WEF in the first place? It looks and sounds very fishy. But he's not done there, you see. He wants to keep going. He has more to ask about the WEF.
Where then, Premier, you still haven't answered the question, Premier. you do not want to have anything to do with the WEF, and you have a well-documented appetite for alternative media sources. So if you're not going to answer the question, and you haven't done so now a third time, the question is, why won't Danielle Smith answer that question? And I put it to you, Premier.
I think
Premier,
I have,
put it to you that you believe this theory, and I think it matters that you explain whether or not you believe this WEF theory, because it looks like you're actually basing health policy based on it.
I think it makes sense to make health decisions based on health experts. The group that you mentioned and the person at the helm of it, I don't think he's a medical doctor. I don't think he's a nurse, and I don't think he's a paramedic, and I don't think he's a health professional. As I've said, I am going to be taking advice from our frontline nurses, doctors, paramedics, and health professionals.
So there you go. He just drops any semblance of being an actual journalist. He goes, I'll put it to you that you actually believe this theory. You actually believe this conspiracy theory. Why aren't you answering the question, Danielle Smith? Why do you believe in these conspiracy theories? It's actually very refreshing to hear a conservative politician stand her ground, stand there, and defend her statements in front of these insanely unhinged legacy media journalists. It's what we want to see. Canadians want to see this. They don't want to see apologies, Danielle Smith. They don't want to see backtracking. They don't want to see statements. They want to see you stand your ground and defend what you have to say.